The Cold War held humanity steadfast on the verge of extinction for decades. But looking back at it now, it was essentially two of the world's superpowers having a metaphorical measuring contest. Although the US may have come out on top upon the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Soviets did beat the US in several categories. First satellite in space, biggest bomb, worst environmental disaster, to name a few. But the category of biggest submarine in history belonging to the Soviets is one that quite often gets overlooked. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I'm the guy with the red tie. Let's get into it. The Typhoon class of submarines comes in at a staggering 175 meters, which translates in freedom units to about 574 feet 2 inches. To put that into perspective, here's an American football field. With 1 yard equaling 3 feet, it's 100 yards in length, plus each end zone add an additional 10 yards apiece. So overall, it's a 120-yard playing field. You would need to add in another entire field to fit this absolutely massive submarine. For some perspective for you baseball fans out there, here's a list of the 10 longest baseball home runs in history. If the Typhoon class was a home run, it would be beat out only by Babe Ruth by a mere 10 inches. If you were to stand the Typhoon class submarine up vertically, it would be taller than the tallest buildings in 25 of the US states. If that still doesn't put it into perspective, let's look at it in relation to some of the most famous landmarks around the world. The Leaning Tower of Pisa at 186 feet is about 1/3 of the size and height. And coming in around a little bit more than half the height is the Statue of Liberty. From ground to torch is about 305 feet 1 inch. The Great Pyramid of Giza, which at one point was the world's largest structure for 4,000 years, would still be nearly 100 feet shorter than the Typhoon-class submarine. So now that we've established a sense of how truly massive this thing was, you may be wondering, why would they need something this big? Basically, they were built to one-up America's Ohio-class subs that were also colossal in size, and needed to be this big to carry missiles, torpedoes, and other large weaponry, so that in the event of a full-scale war, they can be used as a second strike option. At the time of conception, Soviet missile technology was actually a bit behind the Americans, as the missiles the Soviets were using were much larger in size. So it was out of necessity that they needed to house their larger rockets that the Typhoon class became that size. And with the crew of around 160 submariners, the amenities on board actually allowed them to live quite comfortably despite, being in close proximity to weapons of mass destruction. Facilities on board the submarine included a swimming pool, sauna, an aviary, yeah, they kept birds, and a solarium. It's important to get that vitamin D when you're underwater for 3 months at a time. And these luxuries were all very important as it kept morale high and kept the crew comfortable in general. Luckily though, for the crew and the rest of the world, the submarine never got to fulfill its true purpose and was eventually decommissioned years later, with the last one going out in 2023. Well, that's all I had for today, but before I go, I just want to mention that upon the decommission of the last Typhoon-class sub, the new largest submarine in the world would also go to Russia. The Belgorod, which although not as large overall, just so happened to be nearly 30 feet longer than the Typhoon class. And as always, I'm the guy with the red tie. Goodbye.